Isn't that absolutely charming? It's like a Ouija board. Return return address on this beautiful black envelope is delivered to Constance and uh, and I with just a beautiful wax seal on the back. I now I hope our friends here will not object to me sharing this as Ellie and Hunter's. It's a wedding invitation. And look at the seal on the inside. Okay, there's another wax one with a real pressed flower in it. You just didn't want to open it, and we carefully opened it so as not to break the seal. It is a wedding invitation with a beautiful version of the lover's card. And it's perhaps one of the best color reproductions that I've seen. But anyway, I don't know if they would object because it's got their picture in it. Hope you don't mind, but look at this. It's just gorgeous. And they're getting married in November 1st in Oklahoma. And Constance and I will not be able to attend. I've already written RSVP'd. But anyway, isn't it just absolutely gorgeous? And it's we really appreciate them taking the time. Boy, if they sent one of these to everybody, they're probably already in debt at the beginning of their marriage. Today I'm going to talk just briefly about the evolution of a book. In 1993, the good folks at Weiser were kind enough. Now, it wasn't spiral bound then. This one fell apart, and this is the very first, when you write a book, the publisher usually ends up sending you a box of books, sends the author a box of books, 12 or 24. But even before they do that, they send you out a very first copy of it to let you be the first to take a look at it. And this was that copy. So it's sort of a talismanic thing to me. And when I received it, I was so thrilled, and I had this little job as a kind of an office manager for a little stock brokerage. Oh, no, actually, it was a tenant representative commercial real estate firm. And it was a pretty easy job. I just typed up letters and arranged the files and stuff for half a dozen tenant representative agents. And the rest of the time, I just had the copy machine all to myself and the computer. And so I was working on another book most of my hours because I had my own little office and everything. And as long as I got everybody's letters typed, they left me alone. But anyway, I was so tickled when I got this book in the mail, and of course there was a Monday night class going on in our home, so I wanted to copy a few diagrams, a tree of life or so, I forget what it was, but I wanted to copy of it for a handout for class, and I laid this book on on the machine, on the copy machine. And when I picked it up, a page or two fell out. And it was, I guess, what they call perfect bound, which means glued. But the pages, the glue must not have worked very well because I've got lots of perfect bound books that don't fall apart. But it fell apart. Okay. Not only that, but the whole first run of it, either I think they were printed in Canada, but they were printed in the wintertime wherever it was. And I think the glue or something was frozen or something. But there was a problem. And because other people complained to them, okay, and they immediately reprinted a second printing. They didn't even call it a second printing, but it was, and that was Smythe's own, which signatures and thread and things. It's properly done, okay. But so many people had complained, or it fell apart for so many people, and they didn't have the patience to do what I did, that they bought another copy of it when it became clear that there was another more permanent book available. So I don't know if it's true, but I credit the brisk sales of the Magick of Thelema here on the fact that everybody had to buy two of them. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it is to a point. But anyway, it did sell well, and I'm very, very proud of the book. And if you've got one of these, or they're for sale on eBay, if you're a collector, go ahead and do it. But if you're just don't pay collector's prices for this first edition of this. If all you're interested in is the text. But anyway, 10 years later, they said, okay, we're going into yet another printing of it. And I said, well, when you do that, I think we should change the name to the Magick of Aleister Crowley, because that's more or less also what it is. And people initially see the title, The Magick of Thelema, and if they're totally unfamiliar with it, they go, The Magick of Thelma. Okay. So they said, for the new edition, let's give it another title. So this 10 years later, I think it's 10 years later. It's 2003, I believe, on this one. 2003, so this one was 1993. And then came this one. And I gave it a new little introduction here. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. The Magick of Aleister Crowley, a handbook of the rituals of Thelema. Wait a minute. That sounds suspiciously like a book that was first published in 1993 called The Magick of Thelema, Handbook of the Rituals of Aleister Crowley. You're right. But is it the same book? Well, yes and no. Yes, because all the material, sans a few typographical errors, found in the Magick of Thelema is included in this book. No, because the present work has been enlarged and updated with new material, including this introduction, and a chapter featuring frequently asked questions about Aleister Crowley, and a chapter on Crowley's Rites of Eleusis. Perhaps the most important change is the title itself, Magick of Aleister Crowley. I believe more accurately conveys the essence of what lies between the covers. And while it's true that you can't tell a book by its cover, it's also true you won't read a book if you don't understand the cover. I must sadly report that for the last 10 years, the first thing I most often hear when I hand someone a copy of Magick of Thelema is something like, "The Magick of Thelma. Who's Thelma?" By the time I explain to them it's not Thelma, it's Thelema, which is Greek for will, and then attempt to explain about such things as the evolution of magical formulae and the philosophy that puts the individual at the center of the universe, their eyes glaze over completely. The name on Aleister Crowley, on the other hand, provokes a far more animated response. Okay, I don't know if I'm going to read the whole thing. My God, wasn't he some kind of devil worshiper? Or into the dark side, are we? Yeah, people at work once saw this book in the back of my car and said, "I thought I smelled brimstone coming from your car." It seems that everyone who's heard the name of Aleister Crowley has an instant, not very often negative, opinion of the man. Nevertheless, nearly everyone is intrigued and wants to hear a little more. It's likely that at this very moment you're reading these words not because of your burning desire to know more about Thelema, but because you want to know more about Aleister Crowley and his works. It's not surprising. Crowley is far more famous today than he ever was during his lifetime. And while he lived, he was lionized by a tiny group of students and supporters. His public reputation was molded almost entirely by a vilifying string of tabloid articles filled with half-truths, distortions, and downright lies concerning his philosophy and activities. At the time of his death in 1947, his serious disciples had dwindled to near extinction. And with them, the life and works of this remarkable man seemed doomed to oblivion. For exactly 20 years, Crowley would, for all intent and purposes, lie in dead obscurity. Then a miracle of Dionysian scale occurred. He was quite literally raised from the dead by the most famous living entity on the planet, the Beatles. It was 20 years ago today is the hit subtitle. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band was arguably the most anticipated piece of musical art in history, and its magnificently colorful album jacket was, for a time, one of the most recognizable works of modern visual art in the world. Designed by pop artist Peter Blake, the cover was an orderly collage of 62 of the Beatles' People We Like. In the top row, sandwiched between Hindu holy man Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri and Mae West, beams the unmistakable visage of Aleister Crowley. Okay, I go on to mention that since then, Crowley has been voted number 73 among the top 100 Britons of all time. Okay, so I wrote that on the vernal equinox of 2003. So 1993, 2003, 2023. I think. Let's see the date on this one. I think perhaps, yeah, 2022. Now, this is the Magick of Aleister Crowley. Publisher once again said, look, it's the 30th anniversary. We have a new series called the Wiser Classics. We'd like to include Magick of Aleister Crowley as a Wiser Classic. And can you write a new introduction to it? It's got a wonderful new introduction by my good friend Jason Louv, and it's still got the foreword by Hymenaeus Beta. But let me see what I also added. It is, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. It is with great pleasure and no small measure of pride that I sit to write this introduction to the 30th. My hair was brown when the 30th anniversary edition of the Magick of Aleister Crowley. I'm gratified that the work has served for 3 decades as a textbook of thelemic magic, and I hope it will remain of value to yet another generation of students and magicians. On November 15th, 1975, I received my O.T.O. Minerval initiation, that's 0 degree, in an artfully decorated garage attached to the charming gingerbread home of Phyllis Seckler and her husband, Grady L. McMurtry, in Dublin, California. I was 27 years old, and I had traveled all night by bus. Phyllis and Grady and I were the only people present at the ceremony. The initiation ceremony itself was dignified, Spartan, and elegantly executed. To say I was awed by the experience would be a colossal understatement, and it seemed that every word and gesture took place in a strange and magical dimension. It'd be many weeks before the mystical afterglow of the experience began to wane. To tell the truth, after 48 years, well, it's more than that now, isn't it? After 48 years, it still hasn't faded completely. Gee, next year will be 50 years. At the conclusion of the ceremony, the 3 of us feasted on curried rice and homemade chutney. Phyllis proudly mentioned learning the recipe from her magical mentor, Jane Wolfe. Over wine and dessert, Grady, still magnificently arrayed in his hierophantic robes, regaled us with tales of his wartime visits with Aleister Crowley. When I asked when I might get a chance to meet the other members, Phyllis and Grady looked at one another and became awkwardly silent. Grady paused long enough to fill and light his pipe of Perique tobacco, Crowley's favorite. After puffing a couple of choking clouds, he began to recount how, when Crowley died in 1947, leadership of the O.T.O. had passed to the Grand Treasurer General, Carl Germer, who almost immediately informed the membership that the O.T.O. would discontinue initiating new members. Now, I've read this to you in other incarnations many times, so I don't mean to bore you with repeating this story, but it is kind of interesting, especially if you're hearing this for the first time. Instead, Germer felt it was more important to concentrate exclusively on publishing Crowley's writings. He was absolutely right, I think. That were up to then unpublished and difficult to find. This decision came as a severe shock, though, to the handful of remaining O.T.O members, mostly in California, who, after several attempts to dissuade Germer, reluctantly acquiesced to his wishes. Most of the old members soon lost contact with one another, and for over 10 years had gotten on with their lives. Germer died in 1962, naming no successor. Amazingly, none of the aging alumni learned of his death until 1969. Can you imagine that today with the internet and email? To have the head of your organization die without you knowing about it? It's almost inconceivable. Okay, almost none of this aging alumni learned of his death until 1969, when McMurtry, with much encouragement and financial support from Seckler, made plans to activate certain letters of authorization that Crowley had issued to Grady in 1946. The letters, which Grady chose not to activate while Germer still lived, authorized him to assume leadership of the order in case of an emergency, and the surviving members agreed that this was indeed an emergency. I was enthralled by the tale. It was an amazing and complex story. As I sat there at the dinner table, I could barely follow the cast of characters and the many twists and turns. But what I was able to wrap my newly initiated brain around was the cold fact that the Holy Order I had just joined was nearly extinct, and that only a handful of elderly survivors from the 1930s and 40s still considered themselves active members. I had been only the second or third individual Grady had initiated since he resolved to activate his 1946 letters of authorization. I would also soon discover that if I wanted to be properly initiated into the O.T.O, I would first need to research the order documents and help reconstruct the degree ceremonies myself. Well, and with the help of glorious other people. Furthermore, I would also need to play an active role in forming the administrative structure that Crowley had envisioned for the order in his Blue Equinox volume. That's where the O.T.O order documents. 9 months later, 9 months after my Minerval, August 14th, 1976, I traveled again to Dublin, and Grady and Phyllis officiated at my O.T.O first degree initiation in the same garage temple. This time they were joined by a third officer, Helen Parsons Smith, the ninth degree widow of two superstars of 20th century magical history in America, John Whiteside Jack Parsons and Wilfred T. Smith. Sadly, I believe this is the last initiation in which the three of these legends of Thelema worked together. During the 9 months between my Minerval and first degree initiations, Phyllis and Grady separated and divorced. I was heartbroken. It was as if my newly acquired mother and father had divorced the moment I was born. Okay, it goes on just for a couple pages more. And I'm just going to skip ahead because someday I'll just read this whole thing to you as a separate thing. Today, the world of today's magician has been changing exponentially day by day since 1904. It changed dramatically around 1904 and even more dramatically in the last 30 years. All of us, magicians and non-magicians alike, are presently faced with a very real prospect of human extinction in our lifetime. Our greed and reckless misuse of information technology has placed objective reality itself in real jeopardy. This confusing madness is the new screen of collective consciousness upon which modern magicians are obliged to project the liberating light show of our evolving magic. But magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. And if it truly be your will to accomplish your great work in a relatively peaceful, livable environment, then I urge you to roll up your sleeves, put on your magical cap, and focus the wand of your will toward the task of effecting real changes, not only in yourself, but also in the very real and endangered world around you. Please succeed, because I believe it is my will to be here to write the introduction to the 50th anniversary edition of the Magick of Aleister Crowley. So, if you're a collector, you'll want this one. You'll want this one. And if you're a collector with a lot of money, you'll even want this one. Okay, that's it. That's it for today. Today is September 3rd, 9/3. So happy 9/3, everyone. 93. Now, I always say, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will, as I close. Well, you also hear Thelemites say 93. What's 93 about? Well, in Greek, the word, or a word for will is thelema, or telema, and it adds to 93 in the Greek Kabbalah, if you will. And the word for love is agape, and that also adds to 93. So when you say, do what thou wilt, you say 93, will, okay. Love is the law, love under will. And sometimes you see 93, do what thou wilt, should be the whole of the law. Then you see 93/93, love under will. Okay, so I'm sure I didn't have to explain that to many of you. So, but anyway, I wore this to the coffee shop today, where they felt sorry for me, I think. I don't care. I'll take your pity. Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. 93.